the Dems are not happy about this Ukraine-Biden investigation. Whew, stick with me and we'll talk about it in a minute. Hey everybody, this is Deb with Truthification Chronicles, and whoo, boy, I started getting into this, and oh, the Democrats are not happy with some of the Senate Republicans right now, especially Johnson and Grassley. Ooh. So, top GOP senator seeks subpoena for witness related to probe into Ukraine and Biden. This is an article by Catherine Herridge, and actually I got this from her Twitter feed, the links to it, and some of the documents and stuff came from there. But I will link to everything down below in the description, as I always do, because I think it's important for you to have the information at your fingertips. So, anyway, the top Republican on the Senate Homeland Security Committee is seeking to subpoena a witness tied to the investigation of Burisma Holdings, the Ukrainian energy firm where Hunter Biden, son of Democratic presidential candidate and former Vice President Joe Biden, sat on its board, according to a letter obtained by CBS News. Now, I'm going to show you the letter in just a minute, but he sent a letter to committee members Sunday informing them of his intent to schedule a meeting during which they would consider a subpoena to Andreii Telizhenco, a former consultant for the U.S.-based government affairs firm Blue Star. Blue Star was a lobbying firm that one of the major people in it was Karen Tramontano, who I've talked about in a previous video because she used to be like on the staff, I think, of the Clinton White House. So yeah, she was really right in there with Bill and Hillary. And so she's a good player for him. I'm sure she was taking care of business for him there. And so in the past, she actually was lobbying for Latvian banks, which the Privat Bank was the one in Latvia that was so dirty with the money laundering and stuff that the United States stopped letting them trade in US dollars. So they ended up going to, I mean, it made the bank fail. They ended up transferring the bank to Ukraine, and they also had another extension. I'm not sure if it was called the same thing, but it was in Cyprus. So they were all like dirty banks. And the one, when they moved it into Ukraine, I think they were trying to clean it up and stop the money laundering out of it, but I don't know. Anyway, this right here, this Blue Star, was the organization that was very involved in all of this. These different things are what they've been trying to get documentation for. So Blue Star was a U.S. representative for Burisma, according to him. So there's an interview here that Martha McCallum did on March 4th that I want you to hear because there's some really important things I want to point out.
Look, Burisma wasn't necessary in the Republican playbook when Biden was down and out. He was a fourth place, fifth place finisher in the early primary states, and they had bigger fish to fry. Now Biden, of course, is resurgent. You're going to hear a lot more about Burisma and Hunter Biden.
Okay, that's just so bogus. I think you all know that we've been talking about Burisma for a long time, and if you've been watching my channel, you know I've gone over letters from Ron Johnson and also from Chuck Grassley that was trying to get to the bottom of the Burisma connection a long time ago, before Biden was even running. So I know for sure that part of it is just a big fat lie.
So what do you say to that, Senator?
Well, first of all, I appreciate you using the words, we've been quietly percolating this investigation. My investigation into possible corruption in the Obama administration dates back to Hillary Clinton's email scandal. It was our oversight that ended up releasing most of the Peter Strzok, Lisa Page texts. I joined Chuck Grassley's investigation into possible DNC involvement with Ukraine to affect the 2016 election back in 2017. And so it's not our fault that Joe Biden and Hunter Biden got wrapped up in the whole Ukrainian story. But we're not closing our eyes to this. And I have no idea why anybody would object to us obtaining records from a U.S. consulting firm run by former Clinton administration officials that is basically using Hunter Biden's name to strong-arm the State Department to curry benefits for a corrupt Ukrainian oil company.
And of course, the only reason somebody would be upset about that and would complain about it is because they know the Bidens are guilty. Yeah, and they want to sweep it all under the rug.
That's what we're trying to do here, but our investigation and our oversight is much broader than just this Ukrainian story with Hunter Biden and even the DNC.
Okay, did you hear that? It's much broader than even the DNC and the Hunter Biden and everything. This is why what Durham is doing is very important, because he also is doing something that's much broader than most people know. So this is not just a little bitty one corner of our government type thing that they're dealing with. And that's why it's taken so long, because it is massive. Okay? This is going to unravel so much.
And, you know, I mean, the fact is that if, as former Vice President Joe Biden says, there was no issue with any of this, then they shouldn't fear anyone looking into it. And as you point out, these emails that were sent to the State Department are sort of, you know, wouldn't you please talk to the folks from this firm? By the way, Hunter Biden is on their board, right? I mean, that's definitely a suggestion that that name really should open this door, right?
Yeah, precisely. And of course, you have the news media saying there's just no evidence of. Well, that's because they've never looked.
I like that. And it's because they've never looked. Obviously, they just keep saying the same thing over and over, and they assume that enough people will listen to them that, you know, nobody will question it, because, oh, it's like the debunk thing that we've talked about before in the past. It's debunked. Well, when exactly was it debunked, and who debunked it? I'd like to see that. It just never was. They just say it's debunked because I say it's debunked. That's the whole thing. And like this, there's no evidence because we say there's no evidence. Well, there's plenty of evidence. Just open your eyes.
And so Joe Biden has never adequately answered these questions. I've said repeatedly, if there's wrongdoing, the American people need to understand that. If there is no wrongdoing, or if it's not significant, the American people need to understand that.
I think that's very significant that he said that, because that really is just trying to find out the truth. You know what? If the Bidens are not guilty of anything, I want to know that. I want to know the truth, whether it means they are guilty or they're not guilty. I just want to know the truth. And why would you be worried about people investigating you unless you've got something to hide? And that's what's going on here. That's what we're seeing with the Bidens.
But Martha, again, the other things we're looking at, for example, we sent a letter working with Senator Grassley to Attorney General Barr asking him to declassify 4 footnotes that, because they are redacted in the IG report, really make parts of that IG report misleading.
Okay, I think that's really significant there, that there were these footnotes that were redacted, and when you don't see what's under the footnote redaction, you are misled really to what it's saying. And that's very important. So I hope they get those declassified. Remember, a lot of stuff has been declassified by the president, and he gave the power to, choose when to reveal that stuff to Barr. So very interesting on that.
We've also asked the National Archives to look for records of 5 meetings that occurred between January and June of 2016 between Ukrainian prosecutors, Ukrainian embassy officials, White House staff, DNC officials. We've gotten a response back from the National Archives that there could be a response in excess of 10,000 pages. We're just waiting for President Obama's counsel to release those, to sign a waiver so we can get that information. So again,
Okay, so you see what happened? The Obama administration and the DNC met with these special prosecutors and everything from Ukraine, these high-up government officials. They met with them to try to plot some of these things out. And so there's documented proof of this. It's very suspicious and needs to be looked into. And when he's talking about the National Archives, I think I have a letter on that. I'll show you in just a minute. 10,000 pages. That is huge. But look who he has to wait on. Obama's counsel. That's going to be interesting, because I hardly think he's going to sign off on this. What will happen? Can they still get the information? Is it going to have to go to court about it? I don't know, but there's a lot of stuff there. 10,000 pages. When I saw that in the letter, it was like, wow, okay, that's a lot. Let's go on.
Investigation is far broader. The American people deserve to understand what happened. They need to know the truth.
What do you say to those who say that this has been debunked, that the timeline doesn't match up, that, you know, by the time he joined that board, those issues were over? What's your answer to that?
One of the things we are preparing right now is a timeline, and it is incredibly interesting, and it raises all kinds of questions. It connects all kinds of dots, and that really, you know, what I'm hoping to be able to do within the next couple of months is gather enough information, verify it through things like this subpoena, and then issue at least an interim report so the American people can see what this possible corruption is.
Okay, so I think this is very significant because he's talking about in the next couple of months. Very interesting, the timing of this. Things are going to come out hugely this summer. And this is one of them, that he's going to give some kind of preliminary report, because when they have the subpoena, and they're going to have some other documentation too, it's going to be big. I mean, there is evidence out there, and they're trying to track it down. They'll find it. They will. And it's all going to come out to the American people.
And again, it's bullying from a well-connected, swampy consulting firm, and you just have to ask the question: what was, you know, why was Prosecutor General Shokin fired? I can't get that from the U.S. government. I know it was a big explanation that everybody wanted him fired, but there's a document, you know, we have to verify, but there's documents supposedly contemporaneous said that the contact by Blue Star to the Prosecutor General office was all about apologizing for the misinformation campaign conducted against Shokin.
Okay, now Shokin was the one that Joe Biden boasted about getting fired because he was investigating Burisma. And at the time, Hunter Biden was working for Burisma. So, you know, that's why Joe Biden got him fired. And we know that, but he says there's documentation that should show that. And I think he will definitely come up with it. The reason that there's no official word out there about why they wanted Shokin fired, well, that's because they all wanted him out because he was starting to expose their whole money laundering scheme and everything. So he was on the trail of finding all that out. And so not only did Obama want him out, but, you know, Obama and Biden and pretty much a lot of the global community wanted him out because, like, the International Monetary Fund, these different organizations didn't want him in there because he was going to expose all of their money laundering schemes, and they couldn't have that, right? So I think when he finds out, that's going to be the reason. But as of now, you know, they can't find a real reason. Nobody's willing to tell them why they all wanted Shokin fired.
Raises some eyebrows, some questions that need to be answered.
Well, I think we're all interested to see how that timeline matches up. And you're right, there really hasn't ever been a true investigation of all of it. And if there's nothing to worry about on the Biden's team, then they don't have anything to worry about. Senator Johnson, thank you. Good to see you tonight.
Okay, so that was an interview I just needed you to see. So let's go on to the letters. This was a letter to the National Archives that was sent, well, it's from the National Archives, that was sent to Ron Johnson and on February 11th. And this is what they said. Now, this is her copy, Catherine Herridge's, so that's why it's got all the scribbling and stuff on there, and it's not an actual PDF or anything like that. It's just a photo that was on her Twitter account. So, but I'll give you the link. It should take you right here. Dear Chairman Johnson and Grassley, I write on behalf of David S. Ferriero, Archivist of the United States. By the way, I already dealt with the letters to him, back in a previous video, to provide an update on the National Archives and Records Administration's response to your November 21st, 2019 letter requesting access to certain Obama administration presidential records. The request is being processed in accordance with the Presidential Records Act, which provides for an exception to restricted access for records that are requested by any committee or subcommittee of Congress if such records contain information that is needed for the conduct of its business, as well as under NARA regulations and so forth. You requested the following records, and so this is what they asked for. Like I said, I showed you that letter in a previous video. All records relating to the 5 White House meetings listed above, all records relating to meetings between and among White House officials, Andreii Telizhenco, Nazar Kolodinsky, Oksana Shulyar, and Valerie Shelley, including but not limited to these things. Okay, again, we talked about them before. We began the search process, which involves searching for paper and electronic records in classified and unclassified systems. Given the high volume of records that may be responsive to your request, potentially in excess of 10,000 pages, we engaged in, and I got to go to the next picture, rolling notification process to the representatives of the former and incumbent presidents, which we began in mid-December and completed on February 7th of 2020. We are now waiting for the representatives to complete their review with respect to determining whether to assert any constitutionally based privileges. We have encouraged the representatives to consider providing us with interim responses so that we can provide rolling productions to your committees. Yeah, so they're waiting for their representatives. In other words, their lawyers. So that's going to be interesting. Do you think they will try to assert their executive privilege over these? I'm kind of thinking they will. Very interesting. So let's go on. This was on February 27th, a letter to Ron Johnson, and this is by, I believe this is, let me go down, Gary Peters, who is the ranking member in that committee. Okay, and so he said, on February 24th, you notified me of your intent to issue a subpoena to Andreii Telizhenco for attendance and the production of records. I warned, I love the way they do that. I warned when this investigation began that, quote, we should not facilitate foreign interference in our 2020 election. And it's like, we're not. We're looking into what happened for 2016. They just can't get past that. It's like, you keep telling them and it just bounces off, I guess. I don't understand why they can't tell the difference between 2016 and 2020. I remain concerned that the United States Senate and this committee could be used to further disinformation efforts by Russian or other actors. Because these efforts pose a threat to our national security, I have asked for the committee to receive defensive briefings, specifically regarding Mr. Telizhenco, from relevant intelligence community and law enforcement officials to ensure the Senate is not used to advance any disinformation campaigns. You're the one who is advancing a disinformation campaign, Peters. Anyway, so it just, given the significant national security concerns related to this request, it would be subject to a committee vote. And so, and he says, I disapprove of the issuance of the subpoena. Of course you do. Of course you do. You don't want them testifying because you know what it's going to do to Biden. Okay, and again, we're going back to a letter by Peters, but this one is, again, from Catherine Herridge's Twitter feed. I'm not linking technically to her Twitter feed. I'm just linking to the actual document so you can see it. And, you know, sometimes when you get these, they're real small. If you just click it, usually it's like a toggle switch. So if you do that, it'll pop it up bigger so you can see it. Anyway, so this is to Peters, and it says, this is from Johnson. He says, as I explained in my March 1st, 2020 letter to committee members, I share your interest in ensuring that the Senate and this committee not be used to, quote, further disinformation efforts by Russian or other actors, and have conducted our oversight and investigations fully aware of these efforts. In fact, as chairman of the Subcommittee on Europe and the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, I held a hearing on November 3rd, 2015, titled, quote, Putin's invasion of Ukraine and the propaganda that threatens Europe. I understand the threat. Okay, now remember, that was in 2015 when he did that. Okay, to that end, I have spoken with the Intelligence Committee and received a classified intelligence product, which I have made available to every committee member. Our staff also received a briefing from the FBI on February 28, 2020. Although the FBI directly and thoroughly answered the staff's questions, it is clear that they were not the answers your staff hoped to hear. Ba-boom! During the call, minority staff asked the FBI to speak further in a classified setting. Of course they did. Oh, we got to talk in, a classified setting. Because you see, when they get it in a classified setting, then they go and they can leak whatever they want. The Republicans won't say anything because they can't, because they actually respect that classification. But the Democrats just go out there and leak like crazy. So, yeah. The FBI unequivocally agreed to meet to answer any additional questions and told your staff who they could contact to set up that briefing. To my knowledge, your staff never contacted those individuals. Because they were busted. They knew. It was so obvious. It was so transparent what they were trying to do. I have been clear that I would receive any information relevant to our work. I met with majority members in a secure setting to address their concerns and review any and all relevant information. I have made the same offer to minority members. Additionally, last week I suggested numerous times for committee members to meet in a secure setting to discuss your concerns. Because you see, it's got to be a secure setting because it's classified material. Unfortunately, I was told that you and the other minority members would not meet any time prior to the business meeting. As committed as I am to being on guard against the threat posed by our adversaries, I am equally dedicated to not letting foreign actors' malign actions and intentions be used as a smokescreen to inhibit or interfere with the committee's legitimate and important oversight work. Ba-boom again. Then he goes on. He says, we have conducted our investigations methodically, responsibly, and largely out of public view. Okay, and largely out of public view. That's key. Woo-hoo! There's a lot more going on than we know, folks. A lot more. We have gone to great lengths to receive briefings and review and verify all information received by the committee before making any of it public. In fact, had you not objected to the subpoena, it would have been issued quietly with little public awareness. I gave you my personal assurance that would be the case. Unfortunately, you did object and continue to use, quote, disinformation efforts by Russia as a boogeyman to justify opposition to this narrow subpoena involving records associated with a U.S.-based lobbying firm, the Blue Star, okay? As you know, the lobbying firm is run by former Clinton administration officials. Karen Tramontano has contacts at the very highest level of the U.S. government and uses those contacts to try to influence U.S. policy. If you are concerned that records regarding the firm's work are somehow Russian disinformation, that is all the more reason for this committee to investigate. I believe I've been fully briefed and I am fully aware of the expressed concerns. Based on that knowledge, this subpoena is justified, required, and narrowly tailored to address any risk of helping disseminate Russian disinformation or, quote, facilitate foreign interference in our 2020 election. Oh, he nailed him. I love it when they do that. And here are all the people. I believe, if I'm looking at them, I think these are all just the Republicans, aren't they? I don't know. Anyway, probably just the ones from their committee. No, Kamala Harris. Yeah, it's all of the people from their committee, I'm sure, probably. But I love it when they do that. I just wanted to remind you, though, that one of the reasons that's, starting to really get going, and he said a couple months he'd like to have an initial report. Guess what? Jim Jordan said John Durham review due to be completed sometime this summer. He said June, I believe, is what he stated it as. Yeah, sometime starting in June. And also, if you look at this, I think it's down at the bottom. I know you hate it when I do that. Doug Collins said he believes Durham will not release a report, but rather the public will hear about the progress the U.S. attorney has made when there is an indictment. And there better be more than an indictment here. There better be a bunch. When he's ready to charge people, he'll charge people. And that's when we'll know. So, things are ramping up, folks. Getting hot. Anyway, I'll put all the links to these down below and you'll be able to go through and read them yourself or share them. That's really big. We need to share these articles with other people so that they can see it for themselves, what's going on. A lot of what is happening today is we have this news media that takes instances like this and then they twist it all around to make it say what they want to say, you know? But if you read the letters yourself, you can see clearly what's been going on. And 10,000 documents that they're going to be getting, supposedly from the National Archives. Whoa, holy schmoly, that's a lot. So it should be interesting. I hope they do turn it over, but wow, going to take a little while to sort through all that, isn't it? Anyway, that's what I've got for you on this one. I want to thank you for stopping by, and I'll see y'all later.